Yeah, so welcome to Beauty of Colors podcast, Mark. It's great to have you on the show.
I'm so glad to be here on I guess, a Sunday morning for you, Sunday afternoon for me. So,
Okay. So, Mark, tell the listeners about you and what drove you into becoming a writer.
wow. Okay. So I guess my mother was very much into the arts, and I have a chapter in the book that I wrote called "Our Champion of the Arts." So she got us into the theater, the ballet. All she had six children, and all of us, mainly five, were in the ballet from a very young age. And my brother and I were the only guys in the dance school, so we loved it, being surrounded by all those girls. So we went to parochial school during the day, and after that, the dance studio was not far. So we went there and did our ballet lessons until mom or dad could come pick us up. And I liked performing as a kid, but then I wanted to be an ophthalmologist. And so I went to school for medicine originally. And then when I went to the Ohio State University. And when I got there, I thought, well, that program's going to be about 12 years, and I'm going to be with all these kind of boring nerds that I tried to avoid in high school. And I couldn't do that for a dozen years. So I looked for a new major, and I found a perfect one, which was industrial design, which was a lovely combination of art and science. So I married two of my loves into that. And so I became a designer, and then the performance bug, I guess, bit me again. So while I was in Ohio, I was working for one of the best design firms in the country, but I had that yearning to go out west. So I gave up that job. Luckily, I landed another one in LA, and I did the Hollywood thing for 28 years. And so that's, I guess, I always did some writing and wrote funny songs and liked to come up with funny characters and things like that. But it really developed out in LA in the big time. And one of the classes I took was an improvisation class. It was supposed to help you with especially with auditioning. And at the beginning of the class, the guy says, "You're going to be writing a scene and casting it, and the performance will be in front of the entire class." And I kind of freaked out because Hollywood was the big time. This is no more, little school project. So, but I knuckled down and did it, and I cast it well, and these actors did a lovely job, and I got really turned on by all that. So I started writing, I guess, more and more. So went into I used to do stand up, so I did just a comedy. Again, you try to develop all your improv characters, so when you're on stage, you can come up with these hopefully funny bits, or at least funny people in strange situations that would entertain the audience. But then went on to screenplays and short films and things. And then I never planned on writing a book, but in 2011, I got a call from my brother, and my mom was living in the house we all grew up in New Jersey, and he told me that she just shut down, and it seemed like she was just giving up. And there was no major medical problem or anything like that. She was just not happy and was trying to check out. So we all flew in, and we were on death watch. We had a priest deliver the last rites. Hospice was called, so they were there for a good period of time. And yeah, so that was a little scary. So life kind of changed there because I was a carefree bachelor living in LA, enjoying life. I was never married, had no children, and no special relationship at that period of time, other than I had a snack food company in LA. So that was my only real obligation. So I was able to kind of change my life, I guess, fairly easily. The choice or the decision wasn't difficult. The working out the logistics, because I still had to go back and forth from coast to coast to handle the business every few months. But yeah, so I became a first-time parent to a 90-year-old lady who could barely remember my name, and that was my mom.
So tell us a little bit about your book. What is the book about? Is it is it a memoir? Is it about you were taking care of your mom and the journey before the journey that you took when you moved and you kind of cared for her? What is the book about and who is it for?
It's about it's all of that entwined. While I was there, because of my background, and I did this with my dad also, I took a lot of notes. So I took notes and photographs and videos, and I wasn't sure what form it would take, but I always liked to record family history, I guess my whole life. I shot a documentary film in 1995. I took my dad to the little village in Italy where his father came from. And so we traveled over there, and I wanted to document it all so the family could discover what we discovered. And I wrote poems to kind of summarize the family reunions that we had all the time. And I started this new thing called memory book. So whenever anybody hit a special birthday, I would give them memories of, the first one was for my dad. So I wrote him 75 memories just from me. And then when my mom turned 75, I did the same thing. And then I started asking other people to contribute. So these were just a beautiful, and they involved from a list to a really pretty extensive design projects. But they were very special gifts to give my family members and aunts and uncles and things like that. So it was very cool. So while I was taking care of my mom, this journey, I call it my adventures and my journey, was about 3.5 years. So I took a lot of notes because when you're there, it's rare for a son to take over the 24/7 caregiving, but I jumped in, I made that choice, and I said, we're going to do this. And I told my mom, I said, if you want me to come back and move back into this, home and take over, we're going to have fun, but I'm going to be in charge. And her mood completely changed because she didn't want her kid to hear that, hear this from her son. So she puckered up for a kiss, and I wasn't sure if that was a sign of surrender or one wishing me luck. So I gave her a kiss and hope for the best. And so while I was doing this, I had some friends, I think, going through similar things. We're all baby boomers. And so I would share my experience and what I learned. I learned a lot from hospice. I wanted to learn how to deal with a patient from the medical point of view. So they were great. And I was also a very good student. Me and my younger sister hung out with hospice a lot while they were there. And so the friends that I shared my experience with really seemed to get some benefit from it. And so I said, I think we have something here, and I think a book is going to be the best format to put it in, to share with other people and share my experience and hopefully inspire them if they're not doing it or turned off by this 24/7 caregiving, at least to get some advice. I don't call it a how-to book. I call it a what I did book, and hopefully people get something out of it. So after I couldn't do it right away because I'm a very emotional guy, and my mom passed, it would be 10 years ago this August. And so I took my time, and then I moved to France a few years later. And I live in this beautiful little village, and it was a great place to sit and contemplate. And then I decided it was going to be a memoir. So I started studying that genre because I never dealt with it before other than reading a few here and there. So I studied with a memoir teacher and learned a lot from that, and then started knuckling down and writing it. And I was lucky enough to get to find a publisher that liked the writing style and also really liked the message. And it's a timely message because this is only going to get better or worse depending on how you view it, because we're all getting older. And I think they said by 2050, there's going to be 426 million people around the world that are 80 or older. So we're going to have to deal with this in a better way than putting people in assisted living or nursing homes. And so I'm hoping to inspire people because for me, it was great. I treated my mom like a queen, so she was certainly happy about it. But I learned some things, and I learned a lot about myself, and it was just it was a lovely experience and a lot of surprises.
Wow. So tell us, let's talk about acting. When did you start acting? Because you said you started acting from a young age, or did you start acting when you got a little bit older?
Well, It's kind of a funny Hollywood story. So my brother and sister were like little stars.
Mhm.
We grew up in northern New Jersey, so New York was very close. And at this point, I wasn't interested in the ballet. And they were performing in Lincoln Center with the Royal Danish Ballet. And they were kids, so they were like extras, but they were performing in Lincoln Center, which was very cool. So I went to see them, and I went backstage after a break, and a guy bursts through the door and says, "We need another little kid for the show." And he makes eye contact with me and he says, you want to be in the show? And I hesitated. I didn't know what to say. And he says, "We'll pay you." So I $5 a show. It was great. So I said, "Yeah, let's do it." I got a great swashbuckling costume. I think my brother was jealous because I got a better one than he. And we performed. So I got my start in Lincoln Center. And then I started studying the ballet, and we traveled around doing recitals. And then the Irene Fokine studio is where we all studied, and she was had a really good reputation. She was from Russia, pretty strict, so she and I butted heads quite a bit, even me as a kid. Um, and performing in the Nutcracker was a big deal. So they had a lot of for the major roles, they had the talent come in from New York City. And then the rest of them, a lot of them from New Jersey or from her ballet school. So, but then I retired. I got fired a couple times from the Nutcracker. So I retired, I think officially from the ballet when I was around 11 years old, and then didn't think about really performing other than just for fun until I was in my early 20s, and then I started in Ohio. I started doing some modeling, and then I started doing commercials, and I was getting hired for commercials because they said I could act. And I said, well, that's interesting. And so that's when I took the leap and went to Hollywood and started studying right away. I didn't want to be a flash in the pan. So I took it very seriously and worked my butt off to become a good actor. And so that's where it started.
So, Mark, where can the listeners get in touch with you? Where can they get a copy of your book, your memoir? And do you also do blog writing? Do you also write blogs? And
On my well, I have a website. It's a cup of tea on the commode.org.
Mhm.
If anybody Googles a cup of tea on the Commode, it will come up. We have everything from YouTube to a good following on Facebook to TikTok. I've done all the platforms. And the book is available. It's in a number of stores, I think, around the world. We have a really good distributor from our publisher,
Mhm.
but mostly Amazon. Amazon are the big guys. So it comes in paperback and large print paperback, and ebook, and also audiobook. And I do the audiobook. So I set up a studio here in France, and
Mhm.
we did the audiobook. So yeah, and then yeah, so a cup of tea on the Commode, they could see all the platforms. But if they go to the website, I do have a blog where I started. The book came out last Mother's Day, so May 14th, 2023, and I started doing releasing excerpts and little teaser videos. I've done, I think, almost 150 teaser videos that are on the YouTube channel, and also were released on the blog and the websites and Facebook and things like that. So um, my mother was very funny, so we had a good time. She had a good sense of humor, and luckily she passed some of that on. So it's there's a lot of laughs in the book, and I guess a lot of tears also. So, but if they want some laughs, most of the teasers are more on the funny side.
So why did you call your book A Cup of Tea on the Commode?
Commode, yeah.
Why did
Um,
you choose
uh,
that name?
well, my mom was bedridden after this event,
Hmm.
and after a number of weeks, she snapped out of it. But still bedridden. So it was either wheelchair or I had to carry her various places in the house.
Hmm.
And so we had to set up a commode bedside. And so sometimes Mother Nature took it a little longer than was comfortable for either of us. And her favorite beverage was hot tea, skim milk, no sugar. And so one morning I asked her if she would like a cup of tea to help pass the time. And it became a hit. And so that became our morning ritual, cup of tea on the Commode. So it was a practical, and also it helped with because I call in the book, the subtitle is My Multitasking Adventures of Caring for Mom, and how I survived to tell the tale. So I did some multitasking throughout this whole journey.
And Mark, do you have any speaking engagements to kind of encourage people who are going through the same situation that you have been through?
You know what? I would love to do that. I've been doing a lot of interviews and getting the word out through the podcast and the radio shows and things like that. And again, there's a lot of information on the website people can get, but I haven't done any formal ones because I'm not stuck, but I live in the south of France, so it's a little difficult. I did do a presentation here. There's a group of we call expats, so they all speak English, and did a presentation before we were actually published. And so that was probably the only formal one that I've done, but I'm open to it.
So do you have any last words for the listeners about um, making themselves happy and not relying on other people to give them that happiness?
I would say my motto is I've had a pretty adventurous life. And I've jumped in and I jump in usually in any of these projects with gusto. And my motto is find the joy. So whatever I'm doing, and however stressful it may be, if you focus on finding the joy, it makes it so much easier. Not only for you, but let's say with this adventure with my mom, for her too. You want to make your loved one as comfortable as possible. So if you go in saying, listen, we're going to have fun. This may be difficult at times, but we're going to have fun. And my goal was to make her laugh at least once a day.
Mm.
And luckily I achieved that most days. And many times she made me laugh instead, or in addition to. So it was lovely. But if you there's so much, there's horrible things in the world. If you want to focus on that, don't. It's too easy because we're just subjected to all this stuff. If you say, listen, I'm going to find the joy, even in a difficult situation, you say, how can I make this either a positive experience for me and the other person, or at least make it a positive experience for me? It just makes life so much easier. And I'll say one other thing too, because I learned a lot of this, and it came out of my design and also acting experience. All these factors. Once I made this decision, what was lovely is the entire world seemed to support me in this quest to make my mom's last years the happiest they could be. And so I would say the word is empathy.
Mhm.
And when you're designing, you have to you have to do your research and find out who's the end user of whatever you're designing, and you put yourself in their shoes. How would they react to this color? How would they react to this brochure or this photograph or this button on this machine? And you go with that, and they call it, the buzzword now is human-centered design. And any good designer, whether they knew that term or not, is using that, because you're really considering the end user. And with this, with caregiving, the same thing. Even if it's not your mother or your loved one, but it's a person who deserves to be honored. They deserve dignity. They deserve respect. And if they are loved ones, certainly love. And they're going to be a little slower than they were when you maybe knew them, or certainly when you were a child being raised by them. They may not think, I guess, straight. My mother, for a while, couldn't even remember my name. She remembered her other 5 kids, but she couldn't remember my name, and I'm the one doing the 24/7 care. But I didn't take that as an insult or anything. It's just that's the way things are. And so if you really, like before, even if you want to get angry, because again, when you're doing this caregiving, they're your child and their life is literally in your hands. And there are times you want to smack them or get angry or what, and don't do that. But if you say, okay, what's happening to them? Why do they feel this way? Why are they frustrated or angry with me at this point? And how can I help diffuse that anger? And again, try to turn this into a positive situation. So it takes patience, and it really takes, I guess, awareness of all that. But boy, the benefits were great, because there'd be times where my mother would just beam. and be totally happy. And I knew I was doing something right. And it was very, very, very cool experience for me. And I have a thing that was interesting. So I wrote the book,
Mhm.
published, and it came out. And then about 6 months later, because I recorded the audiobook, I couldn't do it after the book because I got too emotional trying to read some of this stuff. And even certain chapters that weren't too personal. And it would just come, I'm kind of a sappy guy anyway. So it took a while for me to be able to do the audiobook. And so it seemed like from the book and this whole situation that I went back to rescue my mom, which is kind of true. And if you look at it, I guess from a distance, yeah, it looks like, yeah, the son went back. Mom wasn't happy and he helped her and she lived another 3.5 years. But I think in reflection, when I was doing the audiobook, that it was kind of a mom rescuing me. Because at that point, yeah, I don't think I had a super purpose in life. I had a lot of fun. I think, a lot of good things. But this gave me a purpose that was more important, I think, than anything I did before. And it was, as an actor, it was a great role. And I think it was definitely a two-way street, but it really might have been mom's, attempt to rescue me and give me something special in life. And so I certainly appreciate that and how that worked out.
Okay, well, thank you, Mark, for being on Beauty of Colors podcast.
It is my pleasure. And anytime I get to share my mom's story, it keeps her in the present, which is a lovely gift for me. So I thank you for the opportunity.
You're welcome.